let me ask you. We talked about this on the Tuesday episode, but somebody was saying if Bryce Harper wins a World Series for Philadelphia, it automatically makes him the greatest Philly of all time. I think that's nuts because Bryce Harper is only into year 5 of his run in Philadelphia, which I couldn't believe at the time. He signed that contract way back in early 2019. But does a World Series victory for this year's Phillies team put Bryce Harper on the Mount Rushmore of Philadelphia Phillies?
If he keeps playing the way he is, yes.
And that's interesting to me because in year 5 of your tenure with Philadelphia, you already spent half of your career with one team in Washington. You're going to spend the second half of your career in Philly. I mean, I don't know if he's going to play all 12 years of his contract like it was written down, but I mean, who plays the entirety of their contract at a competitive level, I should say.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to think of all the Philly players that, and I know we're an Ohio-based podcast, but we try to talk about other teams as well. We're trying to think of like the best Phillies of all time. I mean, Mike Schmidt's right on top of the mountain. We all know this. Mike Schmidt's number 1. You could maybe even put in somebody like Steve Carlton around there as well, although Steve Carlton bounced around from team to team. You could even put some of the modern Phillies in there. I mean, what stinks about Ryan Howard and Chase Utley is that those guys were the face of the Phillies for years, and I don't know if either of them are going to make the Hall of Fame because injuries and age kind of caught up to them a little earlier than expected, but those guys were, when you thought about the Phillies in the late 2000s, early 2010s, those were the two that you had on the front of your posters and all. You could even throw in the late Roy Halladay. Roy Halladay was he on the World Series team in 2008? I feel like he was. Or I might be lying.
I think he was.
Was that right after he got traded from Toronto? I mean, he's, again, one of the 2 guys who have thrown a no-hitter in the postseason, which we never thought that would ever be done again. Then he did it. You could also, I'm trying to think of other guys. You could even go back into the earlier stages of baseball, and I'm really struggling off the top of my head to pick up names from Phillies catalog of players. The only one that's coming to mind right now is like Richie Ashburn, and I know that's probably not the Mount Rushmore level. I mean, I don't know if you pulled up anything.
No, I haven't pulled up anything. I'm just trying to think.
I
think in terms of the recent Phillies, I think Jimmy Rollins could be in there still too.
Yeah,
he had a very long tenure in Philly before he ended up going to the Dodgers and the White Sox.
Best Phillies players. That said, best Phillies players. Okay. The greatest Phillies of all time. This is from Clutch Points. Owen Christofoli wrote this. First of all, this was written when? This is written in 2023. Okay, so there you go. Number 10, he put Bobby Abreu.
That's a fair one.
I just played MLB 2K6 again yesterday. By the way, I got this thing on Amazon. You can plug it into your PlayStation 2, and you can use a PlayStation 5 controller on your PS2. Look up Retro Receiver on Amazon. I'm not kidding. You have a PS5 right there. Well, I was gonna say you have to have an old gaming system, but I have my PS2 with me, and I can use my modern PS5 controller on it. It's so cool. Anyway, Bobby Abreu is legit because I played the Dodgers against the Phillies yesterday, and Bobby Abreu hit 2 home runs off of me. It was a whole thing. Jimmy Rollins is number 9. Sherry McGee is number 8. This is a guy, like, turn of the 20th century player for the Phillies. Won a batting title, put a number of good years together. Richie Ashburn, number 7, so I wasn't that far off. He is in the Hall of Fame. He's also known for the end of his tenure with the Mets. Big Ed Delahanty, and the reason I know about this guy is because I think he's the guy that got drunk on a train to another game one day, and then got on the train tracks and then fell into Niagara Falls, and that's how he died. And I read that in the baseball book, and I was like, well. Number 5, Pete Alexander. I think, was he brothers of Grover Cleveland Alexander? I know Grover Cleveland played for the Cardinals. Grover Cleveland Alexander played for the Cardinals. Grover Cleveland was the 24th and 26th president of the United States. Okay, here we go. Number 4, Chase Utley. Again, this guy, I really thought he played his entire career. I just remembered he played for the Dodgers as well, along with Jimmy Rollins. There are so few guys that play for one team anymore. It really is just that's the way it is now. I mean, any team is willing to take it on. It's not like it was back then. I sound like I'm 90 years old. Steve Carlton's number 3. Makes sense to me. That guy won 4 Cy Young awards. That man was insane. Number 2, this is the one I was thinking of. Robin Roberts. This guy was a Hall of Famer, 7-time All-Star. I think he had like a 78-pitch no-hitter one time in his career, which is insane now. And then Mike Schmidt's number 1. So it's probably going to be Mike Schmidt, Robin Roberts, because those guys have the advantage of playing for their entire careers with Philly. Steve Carlton, and then unfortunately for Ryan Howard and Chase Utley, I think you have to go. You'd probably have to go Bryce, because also he's going to have the remaining 7 years with Philly, so he's going to be able to build a lasting legacy there. He'll probably get to 3,000 hits there. He'll probably do whatever he has to do. I don't know, man. It's really fascinating. And they were bringing up the other day that somebody brought up his Sports Illustrated cover from 2009. I remember holding that issue in my hand, and it was like 570-foot home runs, 16 years old, and like 95 miles an hour. And I was like, who the hell is this guy? And then lo and behold, he became arguably one of the top baseball players of his era. So it's amazing how he's been able to live up to the expectations that were placed on him at 16 years old.
Not only maybe 3,000 hits, Mitch, but maybe 500 home runs. He's at 306 career home runs.
Okay.
So he's 7 years left. He's going to need 294 more home runs.
Yeah, so that's around 40 a season.
42 a season. So it's going to be tough,
yeah.
But we know he's fully capable of going on a tear like that. I mean, look at the tear he's on right now in the postseason.
Yeah.
It's going to have to be multiple World Series for him to be considered one of the greatest Phillies of all time. If not, I mean, people want to say the greatest, but I think it's prisoner of the moment type talk.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
I agree with that.
At the same time, you look at the moments he's provided. And I think that's what people like to talk about. The home run last year, the fact that he's hitting home runs this year in big games. Hits a home run on his birthday and blows out the number 3-1 as he crosses home plate because it was his 31st birthday. Mm-hmm. That's the other thing, too, is 7 more years, you're talking he's going to be 38, 39. Like, there's a good chance he ends his career in Philadelphia.
Yeah, it's almost certain.
It's hard to believe that unless they trade him. I don't see him playing 7 years, though, and then latching on somewhere.
Unless ownership takes a turn and is like, they're not caring anymore, this team's really bad. I can't imagine that now, but anything could happen in time. I'm with you, though. I think it's going to take multiple titles for them to get. I take back what I said. It's going to take at least 1 World Series for him to be among the all-time great Phillies. I think it's going to take 2 World Series wins, and then in the next 7 years after this season, probably at least 5 more. Because I believe every one of them, except for Roberts, won a title. Like Chase Utley won the title. Steve Carlton won the title. Some Philly fans, I mean, I don't know how many Philly fans, but a lot of Philly fans will reference Tug McGraw as one of the great ones because he closed out that World Series against Kansas City, and then Schmidt won it with the Phillies in '80. So it's kind of like that's your badge of honor that you have to get for Philly, which is, I mean, they only won the World Series twice, but it's kind of like with Cleveland. If you were on those World Series teams, you will always be remembered. Now, granted, most of the Indians World Series winners are not with us anymore, but that's neither here nor there. There's always next year.